Hello everybody, this is Dr. Novak again. I wanted to do this video because someone asked a question about this 15-gallon Innovated marine tank that they're going to buy one. And there was a few things I wanted to make clear about it that I probably didn't do in the first video when I showed how I set the aquarium up. Now, there's also some other things I'm going to bring up at the end of talking about this that I think is important. But one question they asked, they said, does the substrate have to be as deep as what I put it? And the answer to that is no. I think I mentioned that in my video that I had the substrate already. It was in a basket. I dumped it all in. And before I realized it, I had too much substrate. But that's okay. If you put 2.5 inches, 3 inches, that's good enough. You don't have to go as deep as I did. There's no reason for it. But, you know, it's just a mistake I made, but it won't hurt anything if you put more in than if you put less in. You know, what I'm saying is an inch is not going to be enough. You're at least going to want 2.5 inches of substrate whenever you make a plenum. It's going to look higher only because a 1/2 inch to an inch of that may be the void, unless you're only going to use like PVC piping at the bottom. Then you're just going to have to make sure that whatever you do, gravel or your substrate doesn't get inside the piping. If you do it that way, yes, the substrate's going to look smaller because you're already now, the substrate will just go around the piping, depending on how you set it up, if you get what I mean. You may want to wrap each pipe so nothing will clog up in there as far as your substrate goes. But otherwise, you got to plan that at least a 1/2 inch to an inch, it's going to be raised up so it looks higher than what it is. It's kind of deceiving when you look at the substrate and you say, wow, that's a lot of substrate for that aquarium. But on the other hand, it really isn't, because don't forget, it's been raised an inch or 1.5 inches. So it gives you the illusion that the substrate's thicker than what it is. That's one thing I want to make clear. So no, you do not have to put the substrate as deep as I have it if you feel you want it to be shorter than not as high. Another thing I should have brought up, which I didn't, that whenever you make a tank like this, and this is using a reverse flow, okay, so in other words, instead of having pumps and everything, I'm using one pump, the pump that's in the back of the filter, and that pump is circulating the water, but it also is circulating the water in the plenum. It's, as my video shows, that I will leave a link below in case you want to watch the video of how I did it. It's a reverse flow and it's teed off, and water takes the path of least resistance. So on the tee, it will go to the plenum, and the main line that's straight will go to the aquarium. So because water takes the path of least resistance, very little water is going to be diverted into the plenum, versus most of the water is going to go back into the aquarium. But the thing I forgot to tell you, and I'll show you pictures and everything, is if you use this method, you have to pre-filter, of course, the aquarium water before it goes back into the aquarium. We all know that. So you use a sock. But also, if you're using a pump, you're going to need some form of a pre-filter on the pump, which I did. For example, I used a sponge. See this box here? I used one of these sponges here, okay, and connected it up with some of the parts from here to the motor, and that's one of these. And I didn't put anything in this part because there's no reason to. So basically the motor is sucking in from here, the sponge. It's giving it a second cleaning, the water, to clean the water before it's pumped into the aquarium. Okay. Now this is good because if you have snails won't get jammed up into the pump, and it's not for biological purposes. This is strictly for mechanical purposes. You don't need the sponge for biological. So basically in this Innovated Marine, they have a compartment where this will fit and slide in there, and then your pump will connect up to it, and it fits very nicely. It almost looks like it was made for it. That way it will pre-filter the water. You know, and don't forget, these sponges like this were called dirt magnets. They really originally weren't designed for biological. They were designed to be a mechanical filter that could be taken out of the aquarium and then rinsed out and quickly put back into the aquarium. That's what they were designed for, because all biological filters start out with no biological activity, and that will include your substrate, canister filters, hang on the back filters, or sponge filters. Okay, they all start out as mechanical filters, not biological, but mechanical. Then over time they become biological, as I've explained. So then the next compartment, there's the first compartment, which would be on your left-hand side. That is where your sock goes. There'll be another compartment. That's where you see the plant. That's the bamboo plant. I bought it at Lowe's. It wasn't any higher than the light, where the light bottom is. It wasn't any higher than that. In fact, I had to actually put a container in there to lift it up. It was so short. But over time it has grown, so I've taken the container out. Look how tall it is. It's as tall as the lamp is now. And then it goes into a bigger chamber, your third chamber, where you have your motor and whatever. I don't put my heater in there. I put my heater where the plant is for the winter time. But that's the third chamber, would be where you put your motor. Now remember, this is designed for saltwater also. So these compartments could be designed for a protein skimmer or what have you. But that's all I have is the motor. And I do use some kind of sponge filter to make sure it doesn't suck up baby fish or snails, and it does clean the water. It's no big hassle. The sponge probably has to be cleaned once every 6 months. And if you pull everything out of the very back compartment, right, and the sponge drips all kinds of dirt in that last compartment, who cares? All you do is just get a hose and suck out the water, and you'll suck out all the dirt out of that last compartment. And the first two compartments will still have water in them, but they won't get dirty. And you just suck out the last compartment. If there's any dirt that falls off the sponge, big deal. And now you have a nice clean compartment. Clean off the sponge and start it up. And you have to clean it maybe every 6 months to, it depends on how dirty your tank is. It could even last even longer, like a year or something. It just, like I said, depends. So it's very low maintenance. But I forgot to tell you that you really need some kind of pre-filter when you have a reverse flow plenum, or if you're using the under gravel. And of course, you can't have a lot of water going through it, so you need to diffuse that water somehow. So only a little bit of water is constantly going into your plenum just to keep fluids moving. But anyway, that is one thing I wanted to bring you up to date on. Another thing I wanted to say is a lot of people have been making comments, and I did it in my video. I talked about the hydrogen peroxide. Now, as I said in my video, hydrogen peroxide has been used for over 60 years. We pretty well know how much hydrogen peroxide to put into the aquarium. It's 30 milliliters per 10 gallons. I don't care what anyone else says. I don't care what anybody has written about. They're wrong. This has been going on for over 60 years. It's pretty well down pat of how much hydrogen peroxide should be put into an aquarium. And my aquarium is proof that, yes, it does work. It's 30 milliliters to 10 gallons of water. So let's say if you took this Innovated Marine Aquarium that's 15 gallons, once a day you would put 30 milliliters, you'd put maybe 40 milliliters or 45 milliliters of hydrogen peroxide in the aquarium once a day. Okay. A lot of people are saying, oh, that's wrong. They say, no, that's about the minimum. We've had 60 years of research backing this up, and I don't care what the articles say. I told you there's a lot of misinformation out there. A lot of misinformation out there. And people don't care if they give you misinformation. There's a lot. It's 1 ounce to 10 gallons of water. So if you were to do it to this Innovated Marine, it would be about maybe 40 milliliters once a day is all that needs to be added of hydrogen peroxide. It will help keep the algae down and under control. The next thing I wanted to bring up, where there's a lot of misinformation, and I think I brought it up in one of my videos. You're always going to have people coming up and saying, oh, I tried a plenum and it didn't work. Well, there's thousands upon hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions and millions of people that are very successful using it. Okay, we're probably into the millions now because these filters have been used ever since I was a child. So they've been used since the late 50s and early 60s. Undergravel filters, which were actually plenums. So that's a long time to be using them. They have already proven their worth. They've already been proven to work. All these new hobbyists coming around trying to act like they don't work. Well, you need to get on the program. They've been used for a long time and they work. End of story. If it didn't work for you, then that's your problem. You either did something wrong or whatever. I get emails every day of people saying, hey, I used a plenum, I did it and it works great. I've been using it for years. Or people who are older hobbyists saying, I used to use it and I never had a problem with my aquariums until I switched over to putting the substrate directly on the bottom of the aquariums. That's when I started having problems. Okay, like I said in my video with the geophagus and the goldfish, like I said, the whole tank shut down for over 2 weeks. All there was a bubbler. There was no canister filter, nothing was backing that aquarium up except for the substrate, the biological filter in the substrate. When I came back, everything was just fine. And I made a challenge to people. But see, no one has taken my challenge. Set up an aquarium, put your 1 inch or 2 inches of substrate in it, directly on the bottom. Don't put any plants in it. Then have a fish load like I have. Make sure you feed them 4 times a day, as much as I am, and see what happens to that aquarium after 2 weeks with nothing but a bubbler. And you don't have a plenum. See what happens. You're going to have ammonia spikes, nitrite spikes, nitrate, and phosphate problems. I guarantee that is what's going to happen. That substrate is not going to be able to sustain a tank unless you have some way of an alternative biological filter of either using plants or using a canister filter or using a hang on a back filter or using a large sponge filter in it. And I dare anyone to prove me wrong. Prove me wrong. That's what I'm saying in this video. You prove me wrong. Set up a tank. Let everybody look at it. Make sure you have the same fish load as I have. And let's see what happens when that aquarium only uses its substrate as a biological filter, it will collapse. You will have ammonia spikes and everything else. Because remember, fluids aren't going to magically move through that substrate to handle everything that's in there, especially if you're not using any kind of plants. Yeah, you'll have bacteria growing on it and stuff, but it's going to be way too thick and you're going to have ammonia problems. This is why I showed you at professional aquarium, public aquariums, they have to stir the substrate up like 3 or 4 times a week. Keep it from going ammonia building up in the aquarium. Okay, they have to keep oxygen in there because the oxygen will become depleted and then all you will be creating is more ammonia. And as the fish are creating ammonia, and especially goldfish are champions of secreting ammonia. They have all kinds of ways of protecting themselves from the toxicity of ammonia by expelling it out of their bodies. Goldfish do. And with those goldfish in there, the geophagus that are in there, the males are at least 5+ inches. The females are already 3 inches. Today, I took these pictures today. You will see eggs on 2 different rocks because both females have spawned. Okay, and they're not keeping up with their eggs and they're watching them because I think there's just too many fish in the tank and they're scaring the females. But just to show you, there's 2 different spots where both females in the aquarium have eggs they're trying to hatch. And I just took these pictures right before I did this video, just to show you. So first of all, why are they spawning so much? Okay, I know what's happening. They're getting scared that the goldfish won't leave them alone. And why are they spawning so much? And if I was putting too much hydrogen peroxide in it, why would they be spawning so much if the hydrogen peroxide was affecting anything in the tank besides the algae, which all it affects is the algae. I try to explain that to you. Hydrogen peroxide has a half-life, 5 hours or less. So it really is going to have to do its work within a matter of just a few hours maximum because light will make it deteriorate. So you usually add it to your aquarium when the light is off. So it will do its work, and then in 5 hours or less, it will be less potent, the hydrogen peroxide. And you do that every day because a lot of algae just can't take that hydrogen peroxide and they start giving up. Okay, and you keep things under control, especially in a tank like mine where the lanai tank is just overfed, has too many fish in it, I know. The fish are trying to spawn. That's why I said in my last video, I'm thinking maybe going with 125 because the geophagus really need more room. So, because they're constantly spawning, therefore they need more room so they could take an end of the tank and make it theirs versus trying to take a 3-foot tank, trying to fight with the goldfish and everything for room, and the goldfish just keep bothering them. But I did want to show you that if the tank was set up correctly and the goldfish weren't in there and there was plenty of space, I have 2 geophagus spawning at once. And if there was plenty of room, I would soon have fry swimming around in the aquarium, if there was plenty of room, because they seem to like the food I'm giving them and they seem to like the water conditions. And we have very hard water here in Florida, very hard. So you don't need hang on the back filters, canister filters, or sponge filters. You know, sponge filters are horrible anyhow in the tank. I don't know where people think they look good or they're acceptable. They're designed to be mechanical. They're not really designed to be biological, but they become biological. And to me, they look horrible. That's why, like this Innovated Marine, you see nothing in the tank. You don't see any heaters. You don't see tubing. You don't see anything in it. That's what I like. I don't like a tank that's full of, you know, like the old days where you had box filters you had to hide, and then you had to hide the heater, and you had your thermostat and everything in there, and it just didn't look good. You know, it looked phony. Today, we don't have to do that. Everything can be hidden today in the back like this Innovated Marine. Okay, this is Dr. Novak. Until next time, happy fish keeping. Thank you for watching. I hope the video taught you a little something. There's a lot of misinformation out there. People love to give misinformation. They love it. Nobody out there ever wants to do experiments and really spend years and years of research or anything else. They don't want to do it. All they want to do is say, oh, it doesn't work. It's this, it's that. Listen to me. No, there's a lot of misinformation out there. I'm just telling you what is known, what works, and how to do it. So, until next time, happy fish keeping.